Well, because as I say, our next guest has been waiting very patiently in the digital green room. And he looks poised as a spring, raring to go, nodding along with this. So good, he's ready.
Okay.
It's now time for us to meet Tony Harding, who's the MD of Momentum SPK. Now, Tony, I want you to tell us first and foremost, because momentum is a word that, unfortunately, first and foremost, by the way, welcome to Men's Radio.
Yeah, those are bookshelves. That's bookshelves, fella.
You insulted them a minute ago. I didn't notice that.
I didn't know you had so many. It wasn't me.
If you look closely, they're not
wallpaper,
books.
isn't it?
Is it wallpaper?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Good
that's
work.
really clever.
Can I just point out, it wasn't me who insulted it. I love books personally. So
when you learn to read, you like them. That's really good. That's wallpaper, Tony. We're liking that.
It is. No, I thought I'd go into the green room early just to to get a little bit of a listen to what you're talking about, and obviously vodka and freezers and breaking bread, walking down the stairs. It's quite an impressive.
It's getting the idea of how this work, how this show balances itself out in terms of the serious subjects. Now, in all seriousness, Momentum SPK, is that the correct way, or is it Momentum Speak?
Yeah. It was a name devised a long time ago by a creative person who thought the SPK would be a nice thing when we used to type the word SPK to speak to somebody on a text. It doesn't really work now, 14 years on, but there you go.
It's still, as long as you guys still do the job you set out to do, that's the main thing. But do tell us, for those who don't know, what is the job of Momentum SPK? What is it you guys do?
Well, I'm a business consultant. I work for myself. So I analyze people and try to help them sell more things and work on business strategies and that sort of thing. So, that's the type of stuff that I do. So I've been working from home for a long time. So none of this is new to me. But obviously, we were going to chat about a lot of things about kidney and all the other things around it. So, that's, the work that I do probably helped me get to a certain place, which I'll probably discuss in a bit.
Okay. Phil, why don't we make Tony the star of the screen and we can be little postage stamps? No, not me. There we go.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's way better. You're the star.
Makes the books look better. Yeah.
I really love that wallpaper. It's fantastic. Anyway, there we go. Okay,
Best of all is you don't have to dust those books. Right.
Or read them.
Tony, as you rightly identify, Momentum SPK is just one part of what you do. But you're quite a busy sort of chap. Tell us about some of the other work that you do.
Well, I think the principal reason to chat to you today really is about Kidney Research UK. I work as an ambassador with them. I had the misfortune, or fortune in some ways, to this time last year be diagnosed with cancer. They found a tumour on my right kidney. I had to have it taken out. Obviously, I found out on April the 1st, which is always a great way of finding out things. It was daunting at the time, but I started off and wrote a blog about it, and it just took off, and people started asking me about things, and I still get people talking to me about it all the time. So, a lot of what I want, to get across to people today is that, take your kidney seriously, because it's quite an important thing. I certainly didn't. I'm the exponent of it. I'm a big lad. I had type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, quite a few things like that. So from my point of view, it's just to try and get people to understand they need to look after themselves.
Tony, let's take a little step back, because when did you first realize that something was amiss? Because obviously, I'm guessing you didn't think to yourself, "Oh, my kidney feels funny, off I go." What was it that sort of was displaying symptom-wise, if anything, that made you discover this?
What happened, Phil, was I had a urinary tract infection about 12 months prior to them finding anything. So, and I was put on an NHS waiting list, 16-week waiting list, and they never got back to me and never came to me. Then out of the blue, just after my 50th birthday, about 10 months after I'd had the original illness, they sent me a note saying, "Look, we can't deal with it. Can you go to a private hospital?" So I thought, do you know that typical thing that a man does where we say, "Well, should we go? Should we not go?" And I thought, you know what, I better go. It's free. I've just had my 50th. I better sort myself out. It's February last year. I thought, you know what, I'll go. So they gave me an appointment. I went off to a private hospital. As part of that, he said, "Look, I'm going to do your scan. You've had kidney stones in the past. Doesn't look like you've got this tract infection anymore. We'll do a scan." Went off and had the scan. got a panic phone call the next day saying, look, we need you to come back in and get a deeper scan. We've seen something on your right side, some kind of shadow. You know, I famously always said it wasn't Hank Marvin. So I saw this as being, right, okay, I've got a shadow. I don't know what that is. No idea. And it was just as COVID was hitting. So it was literally, basically said to me, this doctor, you know, and he probably saved my life if truth be said. He said, look, you know, if you don't come in tomorrow, first thing, we won't be able to do this because of the pressure that's going to be on the NHS. So I said, right, okay, you know, we're going to lose all our staff to them because COVID's hitting and all of our resource will go. So you've got to come and have the scan. So I went and had the scan. It was a deep scan, and they found that I had a 10, 11 centimetre tumour on my right kidney. And I had absolutely no symptoms whatsoever.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. No pain whatsoever. I had bits of kidney stones. So I was just like, jeepers, I don't, you know, couldn't fathom it out really, to be honest with you. It was one of those sort of moments in life where you go, yeah, this will happen to somebody else, but it's happening to me. And straight away, then I went straight into the system, and obviously it was just as COVID was hitting. So I got the confirmation April the 1st, and I then spent the next 4 or 5 weeks going in and out of hospital. And that's pretty much what started the process. And we went through all of that. You know, you get all of the other different things that go on with it, but you know, depends how much depth you want me to go into, guys.
Go in. The floor is yours, Tony. Please, it's a very important subject, and we're grateful that you're here and willing to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very open about it. I mean, everyone talks about cancer in a certain way, and as soon as you hear you've got the diagnosis, there's a little bit of you thinks, you know, this is it. You know, this is curtains. You know, I mean, there's a great phrase I use quite a lot. This, you know, it's a club nobody wants to join, but a lot of us will end up on the dance floor, because when I was a kid, it was 1 in 5 people got cancer. Then it was 1 in 4. Then it was 1 in 3. Now it's 1 in 2. So it's an awful lot of people. So I didn't know much about it, to be honest with you. And the guy that I saw at the private hospital was fantastic. He said, look, you know, it's the best type of kidney to have. You know, it really is, you know, because what we're going to do is we're going to take your kidney out. And I was like, right, okay. And then we went through a process of looking at the kidney. I got referred into the NHS. They were absolutely brilliant, you know, rushed you straight in, sort of had a look at it. You know, they got you to have the consultant meetings and all these sort of things. And, you know, it was literally like, look, you know, we can't do it keyhole. We're going to have to open you up. So when I've got a 45 centimetre scar across my chest, look like I've had a war with a Crocodile Dundee type type knife, you know, the old, it's one of those sort of things. And
Tony, you clearly have great humor about this. There's a couple of sort of things that you've sort of said that have obviously sort of meant that you can see not a funny side, but you are prepared to laugh at a situation wherever possible. How important was that positive, that sort of humorous side of you in your recovery and your time is sort of going through this?
Well, it's funny because, you know, I don't know many. I mean, I'm going to talk about men here because obviously I know women who've had cancer as well. I know it happens for both sexes, but I didn't actually know many men who'd had cancer. So I don't really have anybody to talk to. So we started off with saying I was a business consultant. My business consultancy solves problems. So I just went at it and thought, right, how do I solve a problem? So the humor part of it was just what I do day to day. I am sarcastic. You know, I'm from Manchester, you know. I look at things in a certain way, you know. I like to have banter. I always have done. I have my own pace of doing things, and you know, and I just thought, you know what, I'll just approach this exactly the same way as I would anything else. So, humor's been a massive part of this, and you know, I remember there was a day when I spoke to the kidney specialist, a lady, and she said to me, said, look, you've got diabetes, type 2 diabetes, you're overweight, you've got you know, you've got high blood pressure. You know, we're not going to be able to do the keyhole surgery. It's going to be open surgery. That's going to be really serious. You know, have a massive scar, and you might get COVID. And I said to her the fatal line of, was there any good news? And there was complete silence. You know, there was like about a 10-second silence. And I was like, right then. so it was one of those moments.
But apart from that...
Like, oh my God. So you realise quickly that you've got to get through it. And if I'm being honest with you, it's one of the reasons why I wrote the blog. It was a bit like the Jerry Maguire moment. Do I send the blog to everybody who knows me in my network? Because I'm quite well known in what I do. And I thought, you know what? I've got to share this information. I've got to get it out there, because the reality of it is people just don't talk about it. So the humour was massive, Phil, in this. It has to be, because if people stop talking to you like you're alive, then guess what? You're going to die with it.
That is precisely the reason why on this show, I mean, some people do find it a bit cringeworthy at times when they hear the humour that both Russ and I try and introduce when we're trying to talk about really serious subjects, and they don't quite understand why we're so flippant in between and really lighten the mood. It's very simple. If you talk about something serious with a serious tone and a serious attitude, then people are going to treat it like the great unknown. They're not going to show an interest in it because they'll almost shy away from it. It's just, it's almost quite off-putting in some weird way.
Because it's too scary. It's, beyond. I mean, I'm old enough, Tony, and you will, I'm sure, relate to this because you've kind of alluded to it in your chat. Is that no one would even say the word cancer? It was go like, Fred Smith is not very well, and they give a knowing sort of nod, and you're supposed to psychically know that he hasn't got a heavy cold, he's got cancer. Or they just say the big C. And they wouldn't say it was almost as though you were saying Voldemort. If you said the word cancer, suddenly it was, catching. It was something that you could catch from the ether. We have come a long way in that regard. And what you've done, Tony Harding, is a huge step. It's important stuff, It's very important to get the word out there.
I think what's really important, Russ, is that, I'm willing to talk about it because it's what I do for a living. I often do sales training. I do, all these type of things. So I'm really comfortable talking about it. But I also, there's a tiny part of me goes, I was lucky that they whipped the kidney out and I recovered. And the problem I've got now is that my other kidney is only a third of the size, because that was the other part of all of this. This was all getting discovered at the same time, is that because it's a small kidney, you talk about having vodka, I can't drink alcohol. Imagine having a life with no alcohol,
No,
it's one of those.
So presumably, you physically can't process the alcohol. Your kidney.
I can, but I'm just above the dialysis line at the minute. So the dialysis line means that the problem is it's your salt intake. It's all about the things that your kidney would filter. And my left kidney is only a third of the size of the kidney they took out. I mean, that was a great moment when they said that. They said, "Oh, by the way, we've got some news for you. Your right kidney is responsible for about 3/4 of your output." I was like, "Oh, that's okay." So say that again. So my left one's only worth 25. So they were sort of saying straight away you could go on to dialysis. Well, this is why I discovered Kidney Research UK, because from my point of view, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, things like salt. I'll give you an example. If you have beans on toast, which is a staple snack or whatever,
staple supper.
There's 4.5 grams of salt in that. You're only allowed 6 a day. So you put that into practice, a packet of crisps, 2.5 grams of salt. I'm allowed 6 grams of salt a day maximum. That's with no alcohol. Only have 1 coffee a day. I have to drink a lot of water. Now, I've accepted all that, and that's the boundaries I've had, because guess what? I'd rather still be here than not.
Precisely.
And that's the point. I think you have to adjust your line of fire a little bit. So all of these things started happening to me, and it was a massive thing. And I'm very lucky. I've got some really good people around me. My dog was fantastic. She's put up with me grumping and not throwing her the ball. And my missus has been great, and then all my friends have been fantastic, because that's what you need around you.
I love the way, Tony, you're saying so. Your dog comes first.
Sorry, I'll get hit for that later. To be fair, my missus said to me yesterday, she said, "I'm third in line anyway." As in, like, I'm behind the dog as well, so I don't worry about that. The dog's the most important thing. You know that, Russ. You've got a dog.
Well, I do. Yes, the centre of the entire universe.
Might I suggest that you've mentioned the magic word? What make and model is the dog?
She's a border collie crossed with a miniature poodle called a border. She's a border poo.
Wow,
that's what we call her. She's doesn't shed any hair whatsoever.
Great.
I'm going to read this out to you. Tony, let me read this out. This is from Sue Cressman.
Okay, well, we won't put it on the screen because you disappeared.
Everyone disappears. Sue Cressman, when I had cancer, I was 32, which was 30 years ago. Looking good, sir, if I may say. It was a dirty word. I had one friend just couldn't even speak to me after my first diagnosis. I couldn't find any information about chemotherapy. The second diagnosis, 22 years later, there was so much information about the cancer, such a difference from 30 years ago. I have to say, from my own experience, such a difference from the early 2000s up to 2004. I mean, we really have made a lot of progress. Tony, why? Because I'm not a technical person, I'm asking the question I know that Phil would also like to know. The fact that your remaining kidney was much smaller, is that just a natural thing, or had there been some sort of problem?
No, it's just a natural thing. You're born with that. You wouldn't know. You know, you have each kidney has an EFTR score which fits on each kidney. And once they take one away, you've only got that level. That's what they judge you against for the dialysis. Right. So I'm just unlucky. It's just and the problem with kidneys is that they don't regenerate. Kidney Research UK are working with people at the minute to try and see if there's a way you can regenerate. They're just giving some money to Addenbrooke's, for example, to help them try and develop something to help you redevelop. That your kidney can actually fight some of the disease. Now, mine probably didn't start off at the score it is at the minute. Obviously, it didn't. But if I'd have known when I was 16 that one kidney's not as good as the other, would it have made me change and alter my life? It might have done a little bit, but I don't think so, because you don't expect you're going to lose one. You start off with two and you're going to keep two. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's just one of those things. It's a medical thing that I couldn't have done anything about. The rest of it, I probably could have done. I mean, I think that's the other part of this. I never sit here and think that some of this wasn't down to me. I mean, I worked in advertising for 25 years. I lived the Vida Loca. I had a great time. So, yes. I can't
relate to that.
When when people go through illness of some description, a lot of the time, one thing that always sort of comes out, a common theme, is how they say that their priorities change. Would you say that's the case for you, that since your illness that you've changed your priorities?
I go on holiday more. No, sorry, I don't do that. I tell you what it's made me do. It's made me realise that I probably realise now that saving up for a pension fund is probably not something I need to do. If I'm being absolutely honest about it. But what it's made me do is just be more realistic. And what I've tried to do is, by doing things like the blog and talking on things like this and working with people like Kidney Research, what I'm trying to do is say, look, I am open to talk to people. I mean, I've had somebody I don't know in the last 4 weeks has been referred to me. So that's 4 different people who've all going through the same sort of thing, and I can give the relation to what it is, because people are scared stiff about it. And if I can talk to more people, and be able to talk about it freely and openly and say, yes, there are some bits of it that are not very nice, but some bits of it, the technology is fantastic. I mean, there's a guy that I'd never spoke to a couple of weeks ago. I mean, how unlucky is this? He'd found out that his wife, had cancer, and then 2 weeks later he found out he had cancer. I mean,
oh my God,
2 young kids, and he phoned me out of the blue and said, I just can't talk to anybody. And I'm like, to be able to talk to people like that is quite an honor as well. So is it making me realign my life? Yes, it's making me lose weight, walk more, do the things I want to do, and I'm looking forward to when obviously the brakes are off. But what it's doing is allowing me to share the story a little bit more and talk to people about it. And I don't have every answer. I'm not always right, but I'll talk to anybody about this subject, because I believe that the more people who talk about it, the better it becomes.
But you are right as far as your story is concerned, and that's the most important thing. The way I look at anything like this is, as long as you are talking, you and others, as long as you are talking about your personal experience and it potentially helps others, that's all that matters. It might not necessarily be about having the answers, but it's interesting what you say about speaking to someone who discovered a matter of weeks apart from their other half having cancer. I was, for Shock Horror, another program that I work on, was speaking to somebody only yesterday, and she had been diagnosed with breast cancer a matter of weeks, if not months, after her father had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And you just think, flipping heck, how much does one family have to go through?
I know. I mean, I have looked at the sky a couple of times and gone, have you got anything more for me? Come on.
What else?
Bring it on. You got anything more for me? God, come on, bring it on.
Well, what, Tony, it's strange you say that, because the first book that we wrote, which was autobiographical. It's called Shout at the Moon. You can still get it on Amazon, because I got to a stage with my late wife that I literally walked out of the hospital at about midnight, and I was walking up Marylebone High Street yelling. I was, you were saying you were looking up at the sky, and I was literally shouting at the moon. That's why I called the book Shout at the Moon. You do get like that. You can. Yeah. It really pushes you. It really pushes you. You think, what else? So it takes a lot of mental reserve to get through it. But you have demonstrated in spades that a positive mental attitude, of which I am absolutely convinced, without getting hippy-dippy about it, which I'm not, a positive mental attitude really does help, because it releases various chemicals from the brain, and it helps.
Yeah, I think so. I think the humor that you went on about before, I think it's quite an interesting thing. The humor comes from being positive, I think, sometimes, I mean, even strange things, I remember, you walk in hospital and it's like top trumps, of who's got the worst illness. I remember sat in the ICU and there was like 4 people, and I was sat there going, Christ, I'm so glad I haven't got he's got.
Yeah.
And then this, it's like, it's just one of those unbelievable moments where you sit there going, geez, what's happening to him?
Tony, you know what? That is super telling what you've just said just there, because you said, I sit there and I'm thinking, thank goodness I haven't got what they've got. Whereas others would potentially sit there and think, why me? Or worse, they'd compare notes and they say, when they find out what's wrong with someone, oh, well, I've got this. And it's almost as if they're the ones who are worse off. And that's really interesting, the fact that you would sort of be grateful for what you've got rather than ungrateful for what you haven't got. Really, I believe, so that's very telling of the way an individual behaves and thinks in life. Now's the right time, by the way, to remind you that you are listening to Men's Radio Station. It's The Daily Show here with Russ Kane. He's over there in, I don't know, you're in London somewhere. And it's me, Phil Dave, live from Hertfordshire. And our guest is Tony Harding. Now, Tony is telling us about the importance of raising awareness for kidney disease and kidney health, because someone who, in case you missed the beginning, was diagnosed after his 50th birthday with kidney cancer without any symptoms, hasten to add. It is important that we do learn to look after ourselves, because now more than ever, especially when we're sort of living in an age where people are so afraid to go to the doctors, even if they actually have symptoms, never mind if they don't have them, but if they actually have symptoms, they're terrified at the prospect of going to the doctors. There are other conditions out there, many more other conditions other than just COVID. And it is so important that we just don't neglect ourselves.
I'm going to read 3 comments, Tony, because you're in communication, so you probably want to get the feedback of the way you're resonating. Excuse me. Martin Allen. Tony has a great attitude, a very Patch Adams outlook. We need people like him. Big respect, Tony. You're an inspiration. Ed Grossman. Tony, I love your attitude and humor. It's uplifting. And Paul Claridge, humor and positive attitude worked for me. So there you go. There you go.
To anyone who doesn't know Paul's story, by the way, he was very seriously ill with cancer, and certainly the fact that he's still here is miraculous, frankly. So the way that he has actually sort of said that humor helped him really just goes to show that it can play a massive part. And I have to say as well, I know people who had a very negative attitude, and unfortunately they didn't survive their battle. So I am a great believer that it plays a very big part in it.
Yeah, I think there's something I would say, the 2 things that definitely helped me. I had somebody who'd had a brain tumor who said to me, look, you will get through this, but they wouldn't be doing it if they didn't think it would work. So you put the power into the NHS, and you put the surgeons who were doing it. I mean, Dr. Lung, who looked after me, was fantastic. He was absolutely brilliant from the moment, the way he talked to you. And obviously, there was times where they had to be really harsh and deliver it. And I told him so. I said, I think there was better ways of you telling me things, and I told him all this afterwards. But he was fantastic. But the second part of it was the response from other people around you. That when I posted the blog, I think I had about 10 people, maybe 11 people who came who'd had cancer in my network who hadn't told me.
Wow.
I had a really good friend who'd lost both her breasts. to cancer. Didn't tell me. Hadn't told me. I had a friend who went through everything, listened to me talking about mine and my moaning, and he was having chemo at the same time. And it was only January he came out and started saying, look, I need to tell people. So it's just this whole thing about what we need to do as individuals, understand that talking to people is really important. Yeah. And I think the problem with COVID is it's going to be that there's a lot of people got these things and don't know anything about it. So what I would say to everybody and anybody listening is that if you do feel any twinges, pains that you don't know what they are, go and see about it. Get off your backside and go and do it. I mean, I talked to somebody last week who had a lump under their arm, and I said, get your backside to the doctors. Young family, you don't want this to be something that it isn't, and it'll just be something safe, but better off finding out about it than not.
Totally.
And also, even if, by the way, my sister is actually an example of this, and I haven't really sort of spoken about this before because it was quite disturbing at the time, is the only way really to put it. And even now, I still can't quite believe I'm talking about my sister. But she discovered a suspicious sort of mole on her skin. Don't actually remember where it was, but it was irrelevant, I suppose. Discovered a suspicious. That was it, Stamel. Discovered a suspicious-looking mole on her skin and sort of just ignored it, went along with it, didn't think anything of it. She was a bit of a sun worshipper, still is in some weird way. How she would just always be out in the sun, wouldn't think twice about sort of occasionally using sunbeds and stuff like that. Anyway, she ignored it, carried on. This was in her early, mid-20s, I think it was. Finally went to the doctor about it, and they said, do you know what? If you'd waited maybe a matter of weeks more, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. We can get rid of this. You have just caught it in time. Wow. And it was on the brink of turning nasty. And you just I don't know what drove her to go to the doctor that day.
Fate.
A matter of weeks would have made the difference as to whether or not they had removed it or not, and it could have turned nasty.
Well, I nearly didn't go to the private hospital. The NHS referred it. I nearly didn't go because I thought there's nothing wrong with me. But it was purely the fact that I had my 50th birthday. I thought, you know what? I need to start getting my life in order. I'm overweight. I need to sort all these sort of things out. I might as well go. It's a free check. I'll go. And I would say from a odds point of view, it's 50-50 whether I went to that first session. If I hadn't done, I'd probably be dead by now because it was growing into the valve in my heart. I'd have been keeled over and gone, and nobody would have known anything about it. That'd have been it.
Wow. Sue Cressman says, humor and attitude also helped me. I was in a hospice for 10 months and used to tell all the other patients jokes, Sue, as if they didn't have enough aggravation. I wasn't very good at telling the jokes, though. people, it's all these things are very, I bang on about it because I know too much about it, but these things are so time sensitive, as you, Tony, have quite rightly said. If you draw nothing out of this 3-hour show, if you think you've got a problem, please get it seen to. Just get it checked for your own peace of mind. I remember, I rarely talk about this, but I do remember going and a person I was with, and they said, well, you've got to go and get it. And she said, well, I've got quite a bit. They said, you're not understanding me. You're going from this room straight to hospital. And I was like, what? Because I got plans, I got this, that. No, you're going straight. And that's how time sensitive these things are. So don't hang about. Also, Tony, we're in the middle of this wretched COVID nightmare. The NHS are, and we get a lot of chit chat about this. They're still dealing with people who do have serious other illnesses rather than COVID. I mean, it hasn't all shut down.
Well, no, they are doing now. They're starting to come back to deal with people. They have to. I'll put it into context. I went, obviously, after I'd found out I had the cancer, and it was about 7-8 weeks before my operation. I went to a clinic on a Friday in the Western in Edinburgh, and there were 7 clinics there, and I was the only person in the 7 clinics in the morning session, the only person. And it was purely because people weren't going because they were scared stiff of going. They were scared stiff of catching COVID. The message that was out there was that. So it's gone a long way, I think, and they are busier. But I think the problem's going to be when this comes out of the way, the backlog of people is going to be as bad as it's not going to be, so hopefully nothing's as bad as the pandemic, but I think the backlog of people is going to be huge. And that's another reason why getting to the hospital as soon as you can is important, because you need get yourself in the system if there is something wrong.
I don't agree with you.
Yeah, I don't.
In
I
one
was
thing,
worried about that.
you said something which is really, really. And Phil and I have been debating this for over a year, and it's this: the pandemic's terrible. Obviously, it's awful. It's just it's destroyed everything. But compared to cancer, with respect, compared to cancer, it's if you had to have the choice, COVID or cancer, I'd choose COVID, right? Every time, every day. And as you say, that the backlog that's building up, because it's COVID, can't deal with anything else. What scares me and concerns me is that because, as we've said, these are time-sensitive illnesses. You can't sit around on your ass and think it's going to go away. It won't. It's not like a cold. It's not
No,
like
I mean, you put it into context. Sorry, Russ. I mean, put it into context. There's 36 people every day are diagnosed with kidney cancer, normally. 36.
36. Wow.
Right now, if that was on a, if you put that, into a COVID briefing, I mean, I think there was something like 70 people died in Scotland yesterday with COVID. That's half of the same amount. Now, bear in mind, I think kidney cancer is about the 7th most common cancer in the UK. So there's 6 more that are worse. You think how many people are dying every day of, cancer, or getting diagnosed, or not getting diagnosed. So actually, I agree with you in a lot of the way of what you said. As I say, I think all these things are open.
2 things is going to happen, Tony, for sure, which is why we've never been busy on men's radio and women's radio as well. One is, and we've already alluded it to with our first guest from No Isolation, the pressure on NHS and mental health is going to be unprecedented, because even the strongest of people are struggling. And there's no point saying, oh, they shouldn't be. They are. Everybody is. We all are. That's number one. And as you say, the backlog of cancer patients is going to be huge. You just think, well, how are they going to deal with all of this? It's a worry. It is a worry. There's no 2 ways about it.
Yeah,
by the way, Tony, did you, when you found out that you had the diagnosis you had, when you found out you had cancer, was there any part of you that was worried about how you would be treated based on what was going on around you with the pandemic? Did you fear that you would miss out potentially on treatment because of it?
I think because it was really weird in a way, because I was the only person in the waiting room at times. I felt like I was actually getting rushed up the queue, because there wasn't a queue. But my consultant at the time said to me something on the lines of, look, yours is that serious. We would have operated quickly no matter what the pandemic was here or not. So, but I think it's all about seriousness. And I still think they're going to have to look after people, who are really serious. I think the problem's going to be the people who've missed the chemotherapies, all of these type of things. I think that's going to be a massive thing. And I think what Russ said before about mental health for people, I mean, crikey, if I was sat here now having to have chemo and it had been put off, I mean, you've basically got something hanging over your head for 10 or 12 months that you just, how you did. I mean, think about it, you can have a row with somebody and that can hang over you for 6 months, just by not wanting to talk to somebody. Imagine what it's like when you've got something like that that is really hanging over you, that is part of your life every single day. That's also why, somebody might not think it, but I feel quite lucky. I haven't, in some ways, I feel sometimes I've got this imposter syndrome where I feel like going, I've not had, I didn't have any of the chemotherapy. I've not had all of the other little things that can go with it, the side effects and all of these, sort of things. And then my missus sometimes will step me back and say, hold on, you've only got a kidney that's doing a third of the work. It's a fifth of the amount of output you're getting based on the fact there's only a third of the size it should be. And I think, I suppose that's fair enough.
Tony, isn't the human condition the most extraordinary thing? There you are. You were diagnosed with cancer. You had a kidney removed. Your other kidney's not 100% functioning. And yet you say, I sometimes think I've got imposter syndrome. the human condition is just extraordinary, isn't it? How you can, even under those really extreme situations, it doesn't get much more extreme than what you've described. You think, yeah, but I didn't have this and I didn't have that. I'm a bit of an imposter. Of course you're not, but it's fascinating how we think. Fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a friend who's he's terminally he's got terminal cancer, and he says a story. He's been given weeks to live, not a long time at all. He's a fantastic lad, and he had a really good day a couple of weeks ago where he felt really bad because he was with his kids and everything, and he felt fantastic, and he was out on the beach wandering about, and he felt like there was nothing wrong with him, and he went home that night, and I read the tweet that he put out, and it was something along the lines of, "I've had a really good day today. I feel like there's nothing wrong with me." You know, I feel quite, and I feel bad because everyone's rushing around asking me how I'm getting on and all of that. And I thought, you know what, it could bring a tear to a man's eye.
That's ripping at my heart. How old is he, roughly?
I would say he's about 50.
Well,
48, 49, 50. Way too young. He's a great guy as well. You know, I think, you know, what's the famous saying? Only the great or the good die young. So, that's probably why I'm still here.
I've never quite understood that. I think it's just that people just say that to cheer them. Only the good die young. Well, not really. I think it's just there is something you've touched on earlier. I'm not even sure if you remembered it, but it's something that for me has been terribly important and is again for me one of the engines that pushes along Men's Radio Station. One of the worst things I think you can do, and you didn't do it, and I'm not sure whether you remember saying this, you didn't say, why me? Because I honestly think if you open that door and say, why me? You're opening the door to madness. And I use the term advisedly, because the real question is, why not me? Yeah. It's just a random crapshoot. It's a random lottery. But if you start looking for signs and portents and, am I a terrible person? Have I done this? Have I done that? You will go around the bend. It's just not a question. It's such an unhelpful, negative thing. Why me? Why not?
It's also, I mean, I don't like the phrase when people say, fight as hard as you can. It's like, well, what you're going to do is give up. And if you don't fight and you don't survive, if you're not fought hard enough, I mean, it's one of those sort of phrases where I sort of go, I think the why me phrase is, if you lived your life thinking of why me, you'd never do anything. And I've met loads of people over my life who, I work with lots of people in business as well, where they go, I've not got this, I've not got that, I want this and all this. And I go, well, go and do something about it. You're not happy, go and do something about it. Go and do it.
Stop dreaming about it.
Yeah, and I do think the way because my business, a lot of it is around problem solving and creating strategies and all these sort of things. And, looking at the way people run a business to try and improve it, that helps me, as a problem solver, that helped me get through this. I mean, I always looked at it as being each part was a box that I went into. So waking up was a box. That was right. So, going into the op and waking up, that was a box.
Yes.
I woke up, right, first box. Second box, when am I going to get in the chair next to my bed? Third box, when am I going to walk? So when the nurses were saying to me, in the ward, I remember the girl who looked after me was fantastic. I mean, crikey, having to put up with someone like me, in a hot little room. We were in like a small 4-person sort of square because everything had been shut down for COVID. There was no ventilation. And I said, no, it was shocking conditions at the time. And it was funny. I was running a temperature, so they thought he had COVID. They were like, "Oh, he's got COVID," and I'm like, "Jesus!" I think my temperature was 38.9 or something the first night I went. But I was determined to go and sit in the chair next to me because I kept saying to her, "Look, there's a fan there. I'm just too warm.
Just too hot."
It doesn't take a genius. I'm a big lad. I've just had an operation. I'm just too hot. So the girl was fantastic, Rachel. She just looked at me and she was just like, "Right, come on, we'll get you into the chair." And she said to me afterwards, she said, when I left the ICU, she said, "You know something, no one ever gets in the chair on the first day after the op." I said, "Yeah, but the reason why I did it is because when my mum had heart surgery and years ago, she made herself do things like if she was told to do one step, she did 2. You know, she was told to sit in a chair. She went and sat in. I thought, you know what? You've got to try and take that forward, because if you don't, you're just going to end up withering away. And at that time, at the same time, there was a guy opposite me on the diagonal. He'd had 4 heart attacks. He wasn't even 40. He'd had 4 heart attacks, and he wouldn't get out of the bed. And I'm looking at him thinking, I don't want to tell you this, pal, but if you don't get out of the bed and start walking and doing stuff, you are going to die. But it wasn't my place to, you know. And the nurses are like, well, you just won't do anything. And I'm thinking, well, you're going to have your 5th heart attack, and your 5th one might be the one that takes you away. No.
It's so interesting. Do you know, it's weird when we get excellent guests like you on, and sometimes memories get triggered that I don't know whether the Americans would say suppressed. Me, I just forgotten it. My father had a heart attack very young, and I had forgotten until I was an adult that he dropped in front of me. I'd completely forgotten. And it was in the kitchen in Southgate in North London. He dropped clean in front of me with a heart attack.
My God.
Yeah, I know. I'd completely gone out of my head. And he was never the same man afterwards. And it's very interesting. He was, convinced it was going to happen again, etc., etc. And he was a very, very different man. And I was very young when it happened. I'd completely forgotten. But so the guy sitting in the bed diagonally opposite you, you know, it's true. If you don't, I'm not saying take the risk, but you got to push yourself. You know, you got to do exactly what you did, Tony. Right, I'm going to get out of the bed. I'm going to get in the chair. I'm going to go from the chair. I'm going to go for a little walk. All of those little markers in the sand are so important to test yourself and to progress. You know, otherwise you sit there a shivering, nervous wreck, and that is no way to live your life. It's pointless. Pointless.
I mean, it was funny. There was things happened. You know, I mean, there's little things throughout the process that, in a way, sort of make you think you're going to be all right, and it's kind of weird. I went to the room, you know, the room that we're taking me to for the pre-surgery, and then the guy that was walking me down, because I could have gone on a trolley, but I thought, you know what, I can still walk to the operation, so it might be the last time I do. And he turned up, and he was a double of one of my best mates, and he was also called the same name, Tony. And I just looked at him and thought, well, that's a sign. And then I woke up, and the first nurse looking after me was called Elizabeth, which was my mum's name, and the second nurse looked after me was called Ian. And I was like, geez, that was my dad's name. And so
what are the chances?
So you know, you also have to find things that you believe are happening for a reason, and I think that sort of mentality is something that's key as well. Obviously, it's all just fluke, isn't it? But you know, the reality, if you have to grasp on any little thread that allows you to give you a bit more hope and a bit more, I'm going to be all right. You know.
Hope is the reason is it's so interesting, Tony. You can certainly really tell you're in communications, because the reason COVID has been such a swine is because the word hope was missing in all the conversations. We had 1 billion and one bloody graphs and slides and all that crap, right? And the one thing in life, the last thing to come out of Pandora's box was hope. And you can kind of get through anything if you've got hope. You know, if I can get to that date, if I can make that happen, boom, I can progress. But when you are not offered any hope at all, and that hope keeps receding, and the goalposts are being shifted, and you don't know where the hell you are, it is very difficult to focus. And hope is absolutely essential to every aspect of life. I
Absolutely.
so believe that, you know.
Sorry, if I had a pound for every person who I know is positive, who's talked to me and has been negative in the last sort of 3-4 months, who people I think are really positive people and are really down about everything, it's because they haven't got the holidays to look forward to, taking their kids away to watch football or whatever. You know, all these little things that give you the hope. There's no little barriers. You know, I've always said to people, I say, I'm quite lucky because I'm just happy to be here. So, you know, the fact that Burnley are playing Crystal Palace, a game I wouldn't ever want to watch, I was like, oh, I'm happy I watched that because I'm still here. You know, but in my world, I'm in a different place. But a lot of the people I speak to are just really down about it, and they can't see their families. So that I think the worst thing the government did with this whole thing, and you know, as somebody like you say who's done a lot of communications, is actually take away that hope, but also take away the fact that they didn't give anybody, you know, they put the fear of God into people from day one, that this is going to kill you.
Yeah, I was
You
just
know, and
well, the problem
it's
was,
like,
it wasn't
You're
so much
speaking Phil's language, Tony.
I was this is it. It wasn't so much about taking the hope away. It was about not giving it in the first blooming place and inadvertently taking it away by feeding such negative and, as you say, scary lines. And that has annoyed me throughout this entire thing. I am so hacked off the number of times we hear the number of people who have died because of COVID. And yet when once throughout all of this have we heard the number of people who've recovered from COVID? And
I
that
agree with that.
hell out of me.
I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I said, are we saying that every single person who ended up in ICU in hospital has died?
Exactly.
Well, we're not, are we? You know,
Nope.
You put it into context. I mean, I know from the kidney point of view that, 1 in 5 people who've serious kidney disease and on dialysis have passed away, who ended up in ICU. Now, that's a massive figure. Now, that's people with absolute chronic illnesses, but that also means 4 people survived. But it also means the other part of it is the people without illnesses, how many of them have survived? And I've never seen a figure like that. I've no idea. Have you guys?
No, you don't. You don't see those figures. And the other thing is, of course, to bring it down to the nitty gritty, they say, oh, ICU, it's absolutely full. And if you're like me, I have no medical background whatsoever. You think you're imagining in your head a huge ward, and there's only 6 beds there. It's usually like 6, 4 beds, 6 beds, maybe 8 beds tops. That's ICU. Well, of course it's going to get full. Doesn't mean there's hundreds of people that are lining up in the corridor. You've got to put it in some perspective.
It's very misleading language, and it's deliberately misleading as well.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. When they say that hospitals are full of COVID patients, they don't mean the entire hospital is full of COVID. It means that it's at its maximum capacity to take COVID patients. So whether that be in ICU or whether that be in the general wards that have been allocated to it, it does not mean that there are other wards that are readily available to help people who are actually in need of help for other conditions. It's so misleading and so wrong.
It is.
I mean, when I went into hospital the first time I went into hospital, I expected to be greeted by somebody in full mask.
Yeah.
Full everything.
Hazmat suit.
Yeah, full top to bottom. And I just walked in the bottom corridor at the Western, and that was it. There was nothing. And then I walked in the first room, and there was nothing. And then I had to. Then eventually, I got to somebody who made me press a dispenser and made certain I had a mask on. But I thought to myself, jeepers, I couldn't believe it. Then I went up for a scan, and I was in a lift with people who had no masks on, who worked in the hospital. But they weren't people who worked in the hospital. They were just contractors. They were people in.
This is madness.
I remember coming home and saying to my missus, I can't believe this. I said, they're going on about COVID and all the things that they're doing and scared stiff of spreading it in hospitals, this, that, and the other. I've stood in a lift with Jimmy the lift fella.
Yeah.
Who's just stood there in his normal work clothes. And I'm like, that's really weird. And I've probably been in hospital 15 or 16 times probably through that period. And it always amazed me that, it was only near the end after I'd had the op and well after that, where everything became really serious, and then it was being checked a lot more and there was more things. But I could literally walk in the back door of the Western General and walk down the corridor, and that was it. Nobody. There was a little station on the left, press the thingy. It was like going in a Lidl. You know what I mean? Nobody stopping you. It was like, what?
Let us hope it's not that bad. But yes, but still, it's just, I don't. No one can use the excuse that they don't understand it or they don't know what's going on, because this is all anyone is ever talking about now, seriously. And bearing in mind that when MRS started, men's radio stations started, our raison d'etre, still try and maintain it wherever we can today, but obviously it's changed because of COVID. But the raison d'etre was very simple. It was to talk about, in particular, men's health, mental health, in particular, that and well-being, right? Now, everything seems to have somewhere along the lines a bit of a COVID underline to it. When we were talking just before to our guest about technology, that we were talking to when we were speaking earlier on to Harriet Gridley from No Isolation, and that, technically speaking, didn't have to be about COVID. It could have been about isolation, and yet we still spoke about it. So no one's got the excuse anymore that they don't know what's going on. what is wrong with people for not wearing a mask? It's just
extraordinary. It's just
infuriating the hell out of me,
I
seriously.
don't understand it. I don't.
Yeah,
understand it.
I went and got my jab on Monday.
Hey, very good.
And it was so well run.
Yeah.
Literally straight in, straight out. Couldn't even feel it. You know, it was gone. Back home again. And you sit there and think, that's just amazing how we've done that. And you just sit there and think, well, that's down to the NHS. The NHS at its peak, and the best things about the NHS are absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
You know, I think 90% of the people I've met in this process have been absolutely brilliant. Yeah. But there's been 10% of people where I go, why are you just so rude? Why can you not talk to people normally? You know, why can you not, you know, communicate properly? Why do you have to make everything? Because
without naming them, Tony, without obviously don't do any names. It's not fair. But what sort of position? I would hazard a guess, but I'll keep quiet. What sort of position were those people who were being rude that you were interacting with?
I had a nurse who, every time I went back in, because I also had another problem after I'd had the original op, I still had a kidney stone in the kidney that was left, so I had to go back in and get that taken out. So that was fun. And again, I still think I'm an imposter, so don't worry. And I was like, I used to crack a joke about this nurse whenever I met, because obviously the nurses got to know me. It was like being going in a hotel, you know. So the second and third and fourth time I went back in, I wasn't that bothered, because I was like, oh, you're all right, you know, get on with them. But there's one nurse in particular, and every time I went, she's not on tonight, is she? Oh, please tell me. And they all used to know. They knew who it was, and I knew who she was. I'll tell you a little story. There's a point where you have your kidney operation, and you get all these intravenous, you know, like things through your neck, and so they can put things into you quickly, and they're through little tiny. Yeah, you have like 8 or 9 tubes, and each one of them they have to, so they can flush things through you quickly, and they have to be flushed before you do it, because if you get a bubble in it, you get an aneurysm and stuff like that.
Sure.
They only tell you this afterwards. You know, well, if we hadn't flushed it properly, there was a bubble in it, you'd die. You're like, oh, thanks.
Absolutely.
But there was a nurse came in to show 2 student doctors, right, how to do this, and she said, is it all right if I do this? I said, yeah, no problem. She never spoke to me again till they left. She just, you know, and like was getting the nurses to do it and all this. She wasn't encouraging the nurses to talk to me or anything like that. So the two trainee doctors, their attitude
do this on you as well.
Yeah, so the 2 trainee doctors were doing it, and she was checking they were doing it right, and they just walked out.
It's not like popping into Halfords, is it?
Oh, and I remember, and there was. Listen. I say this in an isolation, because that was the only nurse who was bad. The rest of them were absolutely fantastic. I had some fantastic laughs with some of them. You know, I mean, I remember getting moved. It's all right. We've moved you to a room, and I was like, oh, fantastic! I've got a room on my own. Fantastic. It's got a telly. I was like, oh, brilliant. So we haven't got a controller though. So I was in bed laid up with a telly I couldn't control. I was like, wee, fantastic. You know, you're like, and I used to laugh about it, saying, would you like me to put on, I used to usually go on ITV3 and watch Minder and Sweeney and all that. Excellent. That was the only telly you had on.
Excellent. So, great channel.
So it was a real funny sort of thing, you know, where you sit there and you go, there was just so much humour from the people, and they looked after you. And then once they know you a little bit, you know, they'll come in and they'll say, this is your tea. I mean, there was one day I had you know, the food in there is dreadful. I don't have, you know, it's absolutely shocking, which I can't fathom. You get 50 or 60,000 quid probably spent on you for an operation, then they're giving you food. And what they do is you sign your food for the day after, right? Yeah. So whoever signed it for the day before, whoever that you've taken, is that you get their food, right? So if they've wanted soup, a sandwich, and a trifle, they bring that to your table and say, this is what they ordered. And then they have to go back and find out what's left to give you the rest. Oh, so there was one day I famously had this, and I took a picture of it. I put it up on Twitter at the time. And it was, my choices were so bad, because obviously there's a lot of things I couldn't now eat because of my kidney, right? Yeah. So but the only thing I could have was an egg sandwich and roast potatoes. So I sat there eating egg sandwich and roast potatoes. I thought, you know, this could catch on. And that was me, you know, that was your food. And you sit there and think, it just wasn't great. And I spoke to the consultant about it. I says, this is unbelievable. I mean, there was a macaroni cheese that if you threw it on the ceiling, it was, do you remember the TV program Butterflies years ago? When Rhea, she used to cook the food. Yeah, with Wendy Craig. It was like food like that. I was like, what is this? I never forget, there was a guy came in and he said, "I'm really looking for my tea tonight." And I said, "Oh, what have you ordered?" He says, "The macaroni cheese." I went, "Oh, right, okay." You won't be happy when you get that, because that's what you do. You end up understanding that, but you understand that. I think they're giving something like 68p a person per day. It's something ridiculous to feed people, and they've got to do 3 meals out of that.
My God,
it's bonkers. It's completely bonkers.
Is
it sense at all?
Is another little aside? One other final thing on the food thing. When you're in ICU, you could have toast, right? Because they had a toaster, right? When you moved into the big ward, they weren't allowed a toaster, so you weren't allowed toast.
Well, there you go. I mean, if that isn't a lesson in life, I don't know what is. There you go. So ICU, you can have
Twitter. What's your Twitter address, by the way, Tony?
Yeah,
Tony at momentumspk.co.uk.
Well, that's the email address. What's the Twitter?
Sorry, it's just I think it's just momentumspeak.co.uk.
Excellent stuff, Tony. It's been such a treat having you on the program. Seriously, I'll carry on talking if only we have more time.
No problem, Jen.
Thank you so much, and really, just best of luck with everything, because I love your attitude. Seriously,
no problem. I'm always welcome to. If I'm welcome to come back, I'll come back. But kidneyresearchuk.org. Make certain if you've got any sort of thoughts on it, you should go and have a look at the website.
If you could do us one favour in return,
yes.
If just tell them about men's radio station and women's radio station, because every follow, every little tweet, every subscription to our YouTube channel really helps us. So it's a quid pro quo, Clarice, quid pro quo. All right.
Pleasure,
thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. Keep well. Bye-bye.
What a great guy.
Wow.
That's what it's about.